How we doing, guys? Welcome back to the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. And I want to wish a very Merry Christmas to all of the viewers, everybody hanging with me today. Hope you're enjoying your families and having a great day. It is my part one of the Week 16 rundown. Yesterday was a Saturday, but with a typical Sunday slate. And I wanted to dive into some of the happenings around the NFL. Definitely a pivotal week. A lot of things gone down, and I do think that some teams showed a little bit of their identity and who they can be in the playoffs. I'm going to start this out in Minnesota. Sorry, just bear with me, guys. Brett, I'm doing a show, buddy. Let me call you right back. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, buddy. I love you.
Love you too, kid. I'll call you back shortly, all right? I'm doing a show.
All right, later, Scotty.
Later. Brett, you guys have seen him on the show. New York Football Giants, I feel, showed a great bit of heart in Minnesota. They fell short. Some key turnovers early in the game. Daniel Bellinger, while approaching scoring position, fumbled the ball, as well as Daniel Jones's interception and a punt block late in the fourth quarter. But I think the Giants showed a lot of resolve, tying the game, playing with a legitimate disadvantage. You're trying to cover the best wide receiver in the league in Justin Jefferson. And unfortunately for the Giants, they came up short. Greg Joseph walk-off 61-yard field goal. But I think the positive takeaway for this is that the New York Giants proved that they do belong on the field with a top-seeded team in the Minnesota Vikings. I said going into this game that the one thing that the Giants as well as the Vikings had in common is that they both win a lot of close one-score games. And I believe that the Giants showed a lot of heart. And there's no moral victories this juncture of the season in the NFL. But what I do believe to be true is that sometimes losing a close game that maybe guys in the locker room feel they could have won gives you a substantial amount of confidence moving forward. I do believe in the Giants' case that's something that did happen yesterday. And you've got to give the Minnesota Vikings credit. They carved out a perfect play to get themselves into a final field goal. This is definitely a potential matchup that could be happening in the first round of the playoffs. And the blessing that the Giants received comes here. The Commanders, Seahawks, and Lions all lost. So essentially, all the New York Giants have to do is win a game, which would be any one of the next 2 weeks. Ideally for the Giants, you want to win that game at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Because if you're waiting until week 18 to play Philly on the road, and Philly may not necessarily bench their guys because they do want to stay sharp, given that they're going to have that first round bye, it would behoove the Giants to take care of business and do their best to try to, wrap it up, get in the playoffs, and going into week 18, it's interesting because as right now, I think the Giants have proven they are a good matchup with the Minnesota Vikings. As a fan, I don't necessarily believe they're as good of a matchup with the San Francisco 49ers. So, should the Giants win this week coming up and then fall back, number 7 might not be the worst thing if they draw Minnesota as opposed to the Niners. Niners are currently in the 3 spot. Yesterday was an interesting game, the game of the day without a doubt. I know that I noticed on a lot of social media outlets, the fans of both fan bases, whether it be the Eagles or whether it be the Cowboys, both have been very fickle and really complaining on one another about that the victory for Dallas should be viewed as watered down. Now, I must admit, I don't think there's anything cheap about getting a win in the NFL. You have a Cowboys team that lost to the Eagles early in the year without their main man, Dak Prescott. Now you have the flip side of it where the Cowboys get a victory without Philly starting their quarterback, Jalen Hurts. But, there's a lot of aspects to this game. At the end of the day, the Cowboys still made some phenomenal plays against a very good Philly secondary, very good Philly defense. Play of the day, without question, is the 3rd and 30 to newly acquired T.Y. Hilton. That is what swung the game in Dallas's favor. And I do believe that this is the kind of game that Dallas needed in order to get some confidence. Winning in the NFL, no matter who's on the other team or no matter who's suiting up, is never an easy task. And, the margin from winning and losing, especially this season, more than any other one, is very small. There have been a lot of close games on a historic type level this year in the NFL. But, position-wise, nothing truly changes. The Eagles have to win one game to secure the East and the number 1 seed, which I do believe they will in their next game. And I believe in Dallas's case, they are more or less locked into the 5. So they will play whoever wins the division in the South, whether it be the Carolina Panthers or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers have an important game against the Arizona Cardinals tonight, and that will clear some of that up. I believe Tampa will win. Point to be made is Dallas is locked into the 5. Yesterday was about a feel-out game because the one game that will matter between these two organizations is when they play in the playoffs, assuming Dallas advances against whoever wins the South, which is the weakest division in professional football right now. Moving it over to the AFC. This was big. Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs both hold serve. In Buffalo's case, getting a victory in Chicago, Kansas City getting a home victory over the Seahawks. Now, this is very important because both these teams are vying for the overall number 1 seed. Now, next week is going to be a telltale because, next week is going to be a telltale because Buffalo gets a big challenge playing on the road in Cincinnati, and that is another Super Bowl hopeful. Because when I look at the AFC, I see 3 teams that can win win the conference: Cincinnati, Kansas City, Buffalo. But I do believe for Buffalo's best chance to win that conference, they need to have that home field advantage. They do have a victory over Kansas City on the road this year, but playing in that venue in the playoffs versus in the regular season, 2 different animals. And I also think it's fair to say that being a visitor in Buffalo is no joke, and you got to bring your A game. Not the easiest place to get a road dub at. And, Buffalo has their destiny in front of them in their own hands. And I guess at this juncture of the year, that's all any team would want. A game yesterday, not necessarily with playoff implications, but with historic value to the NFL. Pittsburgh Steelers won a very close one in ugly fashion against their longtime nemesis, the Raiders, currently in Las Vegas, but really where the rivalry was born is when the Raiders played in Oakland, honoring the late, great Franco Harris, who sadly passed away prior to his jersey ceremony. Mike Tomlin has an opportunity to once again secure avoid going under 500. This was what the Steelers were in danger of doing. And regardless of whether they are a long shot to make the playoffs or if they miss out completely, I think it's a credit to the coaching staff and a credit to the way that Pittsburgh manages to stay relevant and in the mix. They had a lot of turnover. You lose a Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, future Hall of Fame quarterback. The tragic death of Dwayne Haskins in the offseason. You bring in embattled former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores, who potentially could be the next man up should Tomlin call it a career in the next few years. And, you have a very young cast, and obviously on defense, you're led by one of the true faces of the game in TJ Watt. I feel that the future looks bright for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think that their rebuild is actually getting expedited rather quickly. In Las Vegas's case, their offseason should be interesting, considering that they might not be very pleased with Derek Carr. And I imagine that in year one of the Josh McDaniels era, they expected a lot more. You know, the Raiders made the playoffs last year with interim head coach who helped navigate that organization around the John Gruden situation, in addition to the tragedy involving the Henry Ruggs vehicular homicide. So the fact that he wasn't retained, they brought in the hot name, they bring in a high-priced wide receiver in Devontae Adams, and the expectations were a lot higher for the Raiders. So it will be interesting to see if they make a move at the quarterback position. Tom Brady has been linked to them. There have been other names linked to them. It will be interesting to see how they navigate going into the 2023 season. But, a classic game of two teams that have a history together. The story of the NFL cannot be told without the Raiders and Steelers, particularly if you go back to their great battles in the 70s. But a congrats to the Steelers. I'm not a Steeler fan, but I was pulling for them out of respect for Franco Harris. I felt that they needed to win that game, and they did. And it's a feel-good win, and I'm sure for Franco's family as well as the devout Steeler faithful. This is a bad loss on the other side. Tennessee Titans losing to the NFL's worst team in the Houston Texans. Got to tip my hat to Lovie Smith. He's been doing a great job keeping the Texans competitive over the last few weeks. They almost knocked off Dallas recently. They almost knocked off the Chiefs recently. They finally get over the hump after a 9-game losing streak and get a win that can alter Tennessee's future. Right now, as things look, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Week 18 could tell the story of who's going to win this division. And as of right now, I got to feel more confident about Jacksonville. And who would have thought Jacksonville in year two, after the start they had, after all the chaos with the Urban Meyer failed experiment, who was to think that this team would be in a position to win the AFC South? But that is exactly what's lining up. And next week, we'll see what happens. But it does look like a distinct possibility that this division will come down to the final game of the season. My winners today, my late father's favorites, the Green Bay Packers. I got the Denver Broncos winning, as well as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The most important game out of these, well, the least important would be the Bronco game. When the schedule came out, I'm sure a lot of people were excited about the prospect of Russell Wilson's new team playing against the defending world champions. That did not come to fruition. The Rams are on the wrong side of seeing what building a short-term super team does to a team's cap space, not to mention all the injuries and the departures of guys like Odell Beckham Jr., currently free agent. Also Von Miller, unfortunately injured for the year, but made a good impact in Buffalo before the injury. Green Bay Packers on a banana peel, but they are trying to stay alive as a wild card hopeful. They are not dead yet. And it's funny because I had Miami winning this game all week, but I woke up today and I said, you know what? I think the Packers are going to get the road dub. So we'll see how that plays out. Tampa Bay Buccaneers got a win today. Carolina has an early season win over them. And Carolina's in a position where they can actually potentially win this division. They definitely shocked a lot of people, pushing around the Lions and just running at will and doing whatever they wanted in the ground game. Before we get out of here, I'm going to dive into what we learned going into Week 17. The Cowboys and Eagles have not shown each other all their cards. That's for one. Yesterday was a feel-out game for a potentially bigger game in the actual playoffs, but a win's a win, and a win is what the Cowboys should be happy about. They needed to get back on the right side of a win after a disappointing loss in Jacksonville. Both teams are nursing injuries right now. What else did we learn? I believe that we learned that the New York Giants actually belong in the playoffs. I don't think this is just a facade. I don't think this is just, beneficiaries of a soft schedule early in the year. I think yesterday the New York Giants proved that they have a lot of heart and a lot of fight. And with an imperfect roster, and with still waiting for the returns of their starting quarterback, Adoree Jackson, as well as their safety, Xavier McKinney, spirited effort. And I would love to see a rematch, because I do believe if the Giants gain a little more health, a rematch is one that they could win. I also learned yesterday that the San Francisco 49ers are definitely for real, no matter who plays the quarterback position. Brock Purdy coming in. He's the third string. And quite frankly, even if Jimmy Garoppolo gets healthy in time, I think it would be very hard to even so much as consider moving away from Brock Purdy, considering that he's having such a phenomenal start, still undefeated as a starter in the NFL. And it's pretty remarkable what the 49ers have done. I think they have the most balance of any NFL team right now. And they do what you need to do in the playoffs to win championships. That's run the ball and play stingy defense. They are a hard-nosed football team. They are well coached. And quite frankly, I think they're going to win the NFC. That will be revealed. There's a lot of time to go. I also learned that the Cincinnati Bengals have the ability to make a late season run and possibly duplicate another AFC title run, maybe another Super Bowl appearance. But, the AFC, you got two heavy hitters that they're going to have to navigate around, that being the quintessential favorites in that conference. As long as you have Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs are always a favorite. And then you have possibly the best quarterback in the league. I still feel that it's Mahomes. But, Josh Allen, Buffalo, possibly the best team this year overall, even with the injury to Von Miller. They are such a deep football team. Until next time, I am Richie. I appreciate you guys watching. And if there's any message that I could leave out for those during the holiday is just be happy for everything that you have around you and try not to overemphasize what you don't. Because at the end of the day, there's always something to be incredibly thankful for. And, these are days that I think we need to emphasize that and just be happy for what we have currently. It's definitely a day of giving and definitely a day of unselfishness, selflessness, things of that nature. I had a great time just hanging with my nephew and niece yesterday, seeing them opening up some gifts and just kind of bringing it back to when I was a kid and, being so excited for, and then you get older and you're like, man, these people made so many sacrifices for us. But I hope everyone has a phenomenal day with your families and enjoy the games today if you choose to watch them. Take care, and I'll be back soon.